Tonight, we'll follow a group of kind strangers on a glorious early autumn day. One by one, each will make a small gesture that will change another person's day for the better. This heartwarming story was a request from one of our listeners, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you to Alicia Steffen for writing it, and I'm delighted to be the one narrating it for you. Now, my friends, let's prepare for a good night's rest by enjoying a little wind down time. Ensure that you're nice and comfortable in bed, and close your eyes whenever you're ready. Music, draw in a deep, full breath, and slowly let it out. Again, breathe in and gently out as you ease into relaxation and stillness. I'd like you to consider the power of kindness and helpful actions, good deeds, as it were. You'll get a greater feel for this as you listen along to our story tonight. But every time we offer kindness and warmth to a fellow person, it can and often will have a domino effect. Relaxation before sleep, music. Every day we can set an example. We can be a positive influence on those we come into contact with, and we never know just how far and wide that will spread. We've all been there where you're having a bit of a bad day. Things seem to be stacked against you, and it might have put you in a bit of a low mood. But a simple smile from a stranger, somebody letting you out at a junction as you're driving, or a sweet and reassuring message from a friend or loved one can sometimes be all it takes to turn your mood around and restore your faith in humanity. And the more of that kindness you spread yourself, the more of it that will filter through the world and will likely come back around to you. I believe that we are all full of inherent kindness. Sometimes the world can feel a bit gloomy and negative, but for the most part, we all want to create helpful, supportive communities. And we can each have our own little pockets of influence on that every single day. Music. So now, as you inhale and exhale even more deeply, imagine yourself in a quiet suburb or small town. The traffic is minimal, the people are friendly, and perhaps the best part of all, autumn is about to arrive. In this place, a series of heartwarming events are about to commence, and this is where our story begins. Bedtime story. It was that magical day that came each year in September, when the city seemed to step from summer into autumn. The woman who lived in apartment 3A of the building at 14 Maple Street opened her window part way. She paused, inhaling the crisp air that drifted into her cozy apartment. The leaves on the trees had only just started to turn a little bit, and they waved cheerfully in the light breeze outside. The sun sparkled gently through the leafy canopy, as if to tell every dweller in the building to come outside and revel in the day. The woman at the window closed her eyes. Her ecstatic smile revealed tiny laugh lines on her face as she turned it to the sun. Then, leaning back inside, she picked up a fragrant cup of tea that stood on a desk nearby and sipped it, letting the steam warm the tip of her nose. Through the crack in the window, she heard the sound of a bicycle flying by. On the street below, a dog barked. Someone laughed. From a floor down below in her building, classical music floated out of one of the windows. It was both an indoor and an outdoor type of day. The woman thought to herself with delight, the very best kind. Finishing her tea, she sat down her empty mug by the sink. Then she stood for a moment, regarding herself in the mirror that was framed in her coat rack. Smiling at her reflection, she put her long hair back into a hasty braid, wrapping a soft scarf around her neck. Then she reached out to a nearby hook and chose a long, soft sweater that she had owned for at least 20 years. It had a small hole inside the right sleeve that only she would ever have. Noticed, she loved this sweater and was looking forward to wearing it for the first time since she'd put it away on the last day of the chilly spring weather months ago. Music taking her slouchy handbag and slipping into her comfortable, low-heeled shoes, she left her apartment and locked the door. It always made her feel so secure to close up her beloved apartment with its gold lettering that said 3A and think I will see you later. She turned and began descending the stairs. When she reached the second floor, she encountered a young woman who had just locked up apartment 2A. They both laughed, nearly running into each other, as the 2A neighbor was, carrying a box so large and awkward that she couldn't see very well. The woman from 3A expressed sympathy, picking up one end of the big box. This allowed her neighbor a much better view of where her feet were going on the stairs. The woman from 2A thanked her upstairs, neighbor gratefully, and together they got the box down to the ground level. Once there, was easy enough for the neighbor from 2A to push her box into the trunk of her car, which was parked on the curb. She waved at the woman from the 3rd floor and watched her walk away down the street with her cozy sweater and scarf. She looked for all the world like she was off on an adventure. Music. Climbing into her car, the woman from 2A was already feeling good about the world. Having a neighbor who was so friendly and helpful had made this gorgeous autumn day even brighter. As she pulled away from the curb and navigated to the post office with her box, she took extra care to drive politely, waving her thanks at people who let her change lanes. As always, she made sure that pedestrians felt safe crossing in front of her. It was such a beautiful afternoon that she didn't even want to listen to music. Instead, she lowered her window just enough to let the cool air inside. There was something soothing about driving in a warm, sunny car with just a sliver of brisk autumn weather making its way into the front seat. Music. And at each traffic light while she was waiting, she basked in that particular smell of advancing autumn, when the leaves become drier and the scent of green gives way to that of yellow and orange. It was one of her favorite times of the year. When she reached the post office, she wrestled the box out of the trunk and closed the lid with her elbow. The car made a clunking noise that assured her it was shut. She then awkwardly pushed her way inside, through the swinging glass door to the lobby. The woman with the box was second in line to be helped, so she rested her package on a nearby counter while she waited for her turn. As she stood there, a silver-haired man came in with a single letter that he wanted to post. He smiled at her and nodded polite greeting. Seeing his envelope, she felt a pang of guilt. Her transaction was going to be more complicated than his, and she anticipated that it wouldn't be quick. Without even hesitating, she urged him to go in front of her. The man initially declined, saying she had been there first and that it was really no trouble to wait. But the woman with the box insisted, feeling that she really did want him to go first and telling him so. The man's expression changed. He smiled broadly at her kindness. When the person at the counter called out, "Next," he gratefully stepped around her and purchased a single stamp. Music. In just moments, he was on his way. "Thanks so much for being here. We have a really wonderful story tonight that I had the pleasure of reading for you all. It was written by the very talented Joe Steer, and I think it's one you'll really enjoy listening to. You probably heard of the Orient Express, the luxury long-distance train that went back and forth across Europe for more than a century. In tonight's tale, we'll be going back in time to the 1920s for a ride to remember. You'll learn all about the history of the Orient Express as you relax in the most luxurious surroundings before we relax into the comfort of the relaxation before sleep, opulent sleeper train. Let's take our own journey into rest and relaxation. Music. As you comfortably settle into bed, allow your body to let go of energy or tension. Allow your mind to drift away far from any troubles or any thoughts of daily responsibilities. With each breath in and out, you are carried further from action and activity. The track you are journeying on promises a carefree destination in which you can enjoy deep, nourishing rest. But the journey itself is one of luxury, too. And you can imagine yourself on one of these sleeper trains right now, looking out the window, seeing nothing but beautiful, natural scenery. All you need to do is relax and absorb the opportunity to travel far, far away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. Perhaps you sense the rocking motion of the train's wheels gently coursing along the tracks. This too can soothe your body and settle your mind, taking you towards a dreamland of rest. Music with a sense of relaxation washing over your entire body. It's time to travel back through the ages to a train platform in the early 1920s. This is where our story begins. The coziest rainy, sleepy story. The year is 1923. You are standing on the platform of A, train station in Paris, about to board the world's most famous train. Around you are a crowd of rather fabulous passengers dressed in the fashions of the roaring 20s. You recognize the faces of well-known figures, actors and actresses, poets and politicians. The men are dressed in elegant suits with bow ties or cravats. They wear light-colored jackets and straw boater hats. Many walk with canes, the trendiest of male accessories. The ladies wear summer coats and dresses with half-length skirts, above heels and stockings. Their bob hairstyles are adorned with headdresses or bell-shaped clock hats. They are what you expect from first-class passengers boarding the Orient Express in 1923. It's been 40 years since the train's first journey, and it's built quite the reputation. The train is the brainchild of the Belgian engineer Gor Nagel Marcus. He was particularly inspired when traveling in America, where he spent many a night in lavish sleeper trains. Nag makers felt that there was a market in Europe for something similar. He dreamed of a transcontinental service offering speed and comfort to those traveling across Europe. In 1870, he published his proposal to develop sleeper carriages for the European market. Though his plans would be postponed due to the Franco-Russian War, he would finally have his test run 12 years later. In 1882, guests were invited to travel aboard the Tannenau-Claire Deluxe, literally translated as a lightning luxury train. It was essentially a prototype of the Orient Express. The train would travel over 2,000 kilometers while its passengers relaxed in comfortable surroundings. They dined on oysters and drank champagne before retiring to the comfort of their private sleeper cabins. The train left Paris at around 6:30 p.m. on the 10th of November, 1882, and it arrived in Austria the next day, reaching Vienna at 11:20 p.m. By today's standards, this might seem rather slow, but in 1882, it was quite remarkable, though well established in Europe. Trains were still relatively new, and air travel was still just a dream, thought by most to be impossible. Traveling long distances was often dangerous and uncomfortable, not to mention painstakingly slow. The journey from Paris to Vienna could potentially take weeks, whereas a luxury lightning train made the trip in less than 30 hours. It's little wonder that the trip was a success, leaving Nagelmacher's free to proceed with his plans. His company went to work building exclusive carriages, which would be used with locomotives run by national rail companies. Passengers would buy a ticket aboard the train and pay an extra fee for their deluxe sleeper carriage. It wasn't a train for the average Frenchman. A ticket from Paris to Constantinople cost 700 gold francs, about half the annual salary of a skilled worker. But for the elite, it became a preferred way to travel, whether crossing the continent on business or pleasure. The train captured the spirit of the time later named Labelli, or the Beautiful Age. This was a period of prosperity between the end of the Franco-Russian War in 1871 and the start of the First World War in 1914. It was a time of economic growth and technological advancement, of rising wages and social mobility. The emerging middle classes sought travel and adventure. They wanted to tour the continent like their aristocratic counterparts. The train, initially named the Express Dong, allowed passengers to do just that. It was a 5-star hotel moving across Europe, making its first official journey in June 1883. The nature of the carriages, which were shared among different networks, meant that it was relatively easy to add routes and destinations. Throughout its long lifetime, there would be several major routes, stopping at various cities across Central and Eastern Europe. Destinations included London, Athens, Venice, and Bucharest. But today in Paris, we are traveling on the original line. The train is bound for Constantinople, or Istanbul, as it will later be known. It's hard to imagine a more appealing destination for the wealthy and adventurous in 1923. The city was once the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, and then until October this year, the capital of the Ottoman Empire. But our first destination is the train itself, the Orient Express. And what a destination it promises to be with the carriages renovated after the First World War. Even from the outside, the train oozes glamour with its shiny exterior, painted a deep royal blue. Along the sides are thick gold lettering displaying the name of Nagelmacher's Company, the Company International de Wagon Lee. Each carriage is adorned with the company's golden crest, 2 regal griffins. More gold runs down the midline of the carriages with rectangular windows spaced evenly. Above, the sides of the curtains are visible through the glass lit by the glow of table lamps. The train certainly looks inviting, and you are glad when you see passengers being welcomed on board. Soon it's your turn to be greeted at the door by a cabin steward dressed in navy blue. His tailored suit has gold braiding, and the jacket is fastened down the front with large gold buttons that glitter in the sunlight. On his head, he wears a rimless blue cap, sometimes referred to as a bellboy cap. At front and center is the company crest, embroidered in gold. The steward greets you with genuine warmth, reaching out a hand gloved in white. He looks over your ticket and welcomes you on board, where another cheery steward will direct you to your cabin. It's only a short walk, but it's enough to leave you with a lasting impression. The interior of the train is even grander than you expected. Not that the prospect ever worried Agatha Christie, a frequent passenger on the Orient Express, matches the elegance of the best hotels in Europe. You tread over a carpet of rich burgundy, which absorbs the sound part. It's thanks to the publication of Price around you are gorgeous. In 1934, mahogany and subsequent adaptations for film and television. The sunlight, that the Orient Express, clear that no expense is spared in the post-war. It will forever be known for its carriage interior and splendor. It's said to have been revamped by in style. Who a designer, you continue to read in the privacy of your cabin. Fame throughout until the scent of food on the carriage makes its way along. Decorative panels have been placed. The sky outside is dimming slightly. The renowned glance at your watch tells you. Designed the striking market, putting down in the woodwork. You draw elaborate decoration. Curtains closed is the first thing you notice. Then you flip the switch when you look through the door. Cabin light, own private illuminating its fan-shaped light frame. Wooden walls. Next, displayed turn on the brass table lamp. They are rimmed with outline of above images at their center. The central motif, the coral fabric striking right around it. A large oval fringe at the bottom seems to drip. Is an Art Deco design, taking clothes from lots of layered shapes and contrasting. You change into an outfit appropriate. Orange blooms and leaves of bronze. You'll blend in nicely handsomely against a black background. Their dinner suits and the ladies just below, dazzling evening against the wall. You return your suitcase to the bronze shelf. The steward points out a few features, the door, like the button on the wall, step out into the corridor. Can press the call. The carpet is now lit by lights. A table in the corner lifts to reveal a total and 2 shiny. The train is about providing both cold and hot water, including perhaps the most magical feature and a couple of dining carriages. Is that the couch doubles up as a. It takes a little time to reach the restaurant. It will be transformed, especially when walking at a nice restaurant. So it's a stroll that you'll return from dinner observing your surroundings, bed ready out, and nodding greetings. The train will soon be departing. Occasionally, you catch sight of your reflection in the window. He'll leave you to enjoy the comfort of your cabin. Is one of calm tea and coffee will be brought. You know that you're nearing the restaurant. But just press the button if there grows strong. Anything that you need, and more tantalizing. You place your luggage on a high shelf. You're greeted warmly by a waiter, immaculately sinking into the olive green sofa uniform. You run your finger over the table right beside cover. Window pattern of leaves and full silver service. Bronze. The seats around are luxurious table armchairs, mahogany upholstered in a floral design. Juts out beneath. You sit down happily on the velvety center of the cabin as the waiter on the table is a lamp and a vase, expensive champagne, flowers, and enough space. Another glass is filled with water. Teacup, along just with as you're looking at a slice of lemon. Surface the waiter directs your attention. You notice movement. A set reflection of gourmet dishes just outside. It begins with a bowl of staff are taking their positions trolley as the train's engine hums to life. Later, you hear the sound of doors clicking shut. Bowl which it's a sound that echoes across the trains. You savor the taste of the thin, and you can hear the delicious soup too. Enjoying from each mouthful from a silver. The world outside on the shaded platform couldn't be more different from your bread roll with fresh your carriage and spread. It almost looks like a black and butter. You examine the carriage even more so behind a veil, taking in the details of the soon you feel the train wheels begin panels and would display stylized roses etched in picking up speed. Glimmering train starts to chug in a constant rhythm. These Orient Express resemble away from on your table. Clouds of single rose standing tall in a disappearing from silver vase above the train. You lean forward to smell the scent of a trail of silver As the waiter arrives to take your marking the train's route to Paris, the roses, the countryside, musky fragrance hangs away from the shade in the air as he returns. Your cabin is brightened by the dew-fine afternoon light. The patterns of sunlight for its presentation alone. Table and highlight fish and potatoes are visible on the surface. The turbot is coated with champagne cream sauce, is brightened, while the fried potato croquettes are sprinkled with chopped parsley. Their long green stems are visible through the base. Two ladies enter the dining carriage, which is made of finest crystal. One has the air and appearance across its surface. She wears a stunning gown of shadow of the station's platform. Her neck, the lampshades, bright green emerald, pink tone. Meanwhile, now in the glow, her friend is dressed summer sun black. It looks closer to wonder salmon, or coral, or chaperone. The top and bottom of the bell-shaped lampshade. The women seem friendly and altogether relaxed in one another. Castles hang down. You can't help but overhear their cheers, which has an ornate conversation as they admire the paneling. You notice the tip of the ornate bronze frame. It's from them you learn that Renee Lake apparently had a hand. It's carved into the shape of a little. Who better than the renowned glassmaker, sparkling where it catches the sunlight to decorate the walls. And there are similar details throughout your cabin, and not subtle just decorations everywhere. But panes of glass a short while after the start of your journey. Surface. A member of the crew. They remind you the statues, the trolleys. He sets down goddesses that adorn temples in ancient Greece. Sugar. Once reminding you that the restaurant will soon begin. The waiter arrives again. For now, sets down you're happy to sip lovely warm tea. You close your eyes, enjoying each slow sip. The refreshing scent blends with the sweetness of the marigolds, creating a pleasant atmosphere in your cozy cabin. Once you finish your tea, you feel warm enough to remove your jacket. You drape it from a hanger on a hook beneath the ceiling, where it rests against the wall of exquisite woodwork. Most of your bags have been taken to the baggage car, aside from the one that you place on the shelf. You can see it above you through the gaps in the bronze lattice of the shelf. You bring down the small suitcase and click it open to find your novel. Resting the case on the carpet, you then slide off your shoes. A bolster cushion can be moved to provide support against the wall, allowing you to relax opposite the window. You can bring up your feet to rest on the sofa and stay within reach of the table. There's something so relaxing about the rhythm of the train. It feels like you might be rocked into sleep, and it's the perfect background for reading. At least that's what you decide as you turn to your novel. The book is a thriller that you've read twice already, an enthralling mystery. Naturally, the suspense is softened with each reading. The story is more comforting now that you're familiar with the plot. It's the kind of story that's perfectly suited to your journey. On a train known as the Spies Express, with various routes across Europe's major cities, the Orient Express has been the favored mode of transport for diplomats and spies. Notable passengers include Mata Hari, the Dutch exotic dancer turned spy for Germany, Lord Robert Baden-Powell, best known today as founder of the Boy Scouts, is also thought to have been a passenger on the Orient Express. As a spy for the Allies, he traveled throughout Europe, posing as a butterfly collector. Ben Powell would fill out the pages of his notebook with sketch after sketch of beautiful butterflies. Coded drawings were hidden within the wings, secret diagrams of enemy fortifications. With such a history, it's not so surprising that the train will eventually be immortalized in fiction. By the mid-1960s, one of its best-known passengers will be the fictional spy James Bond. In Ian Fleming's novel, From Russia with Love, the secret agent rides from Istanbul to Paris. A cabin similar to the one you're staying in was recreated for the film and used alongside real footage of the train. More famously still, the train appears in the work of Agatha Christie. In Murder on the Orient Express, Detective Poirot must solve a homicide, and all the while the train is stuck in a snowdrift. This part was inspired by real-life events. In 1929, the train indeed became stuck. For several days, it remained stranded in a snowdrift west of Istanbul.